Welcome to The People's View, a program dedicated to discussing local, state, and national issues and their effect on the American people. The People's View provides a platform for state representatives and national figures to present their viewpoint. Whether it's social, economic, or financial topics, you'll hear it on The People's View.
Hello, this is Representative Carl Seidel, along with co-host Representative Pete Silva, and our guest Scott Moody from Cornerstone Research. This is The People's View, sponsored by the Nashua Republican City Committee. And if you want to know anything about the events that are happening, political events, please go to our website at nashuagop.org. And today, we're going to talk to Mr. Moody about Cornerstone. He's going to tell us a little bit about the background, and then we're going to get into some of the policy issues that have been going on, influencing the things that are up in Concord.
Well, thank you for having me. Cornerstone is a 10-year-old organization now. I've recently just started at the beginning of the year, along with Wendy, our new executive director. We are actually one of 37 state groups in the country under the banner of Family Research Councils. And our goal is to strengthen families across the country, but our job is specifically to do so in New Hampshire. Now, Cornerstone is actually, we're two separate organizations. One is Cornerstone Policy Research, which is what I head up, and we're going to be publishing studies and doing research into the state of New Hampshire's families and try to get a better understanding of where we are. And secondly, Cornerstone Action, and that is the part of us that is up in Concord, and following the legislation, tracking legislation that we feel is important to New Hampshire families, and the policies that we feel will help support New Hampshire families. My personal background, I'm actually trained as an economist, which some people find kind of odd, given the position we're in, where we've historically looked at a lot of social issues, pro-life and in favor of traditional marriage, for example. But there are a lot of issues out there actually where social and the financial side of the equation come together as one and are dramatically impacting our economy at large. And let me just give you a quick example. Right now in New Hampshire, according to the latest census data, basically everything north of Concord, there's something going on called demographic winter, which means that there are too few births and in order to sustain the current level of population. So right now in New Hampshire as a state, we have 3,000 more births than deaths in the state. But when you go north of Concord, that number is actually negative. There are more deaths than births. Now, that's a social issue. That's a social problem. And we feel it's a direct result of the devaluation of the family and traditional marriage, going all the way back from no-fault divorce all the way up to today's debate on same-sex marriage. But it's going to have very real economic impacts. I mean, you know how hard it is to get economic growth when there's a growing population. Now imagine trying to do it with a shrinking population. Businesses can't find employees. You can't find customers to sell to. And it's actually going on in the world right now. Japan is going through it. As a country, they're losing people. So the former Soviet Union, a lot of Western European countries have already entered this demographic winter. And it's just now happening in New Hampshire. It's not just New Hampshire's problem, actually all of northern New England. If you look over in Maine, for example, their net population growth due to births and deaths was 180 last year.
Oh, boy.
That's it. It's pretty much zero. 10 out of the 16 counties over there have negative net natural population growth. So we're not as bad as them. We only have 3 counties. Of course, we have fewer counties than they do. But it is a problem that's region-wide, and it's going to affect us region-wide as well as a state. And so my goal, I feel, is we need to get under the hood, understand what's causing the problem, and then try to find some solutions.
So explain for someone who's not an economist, like I'm the opposite, my wife will tell you. It's not really that people aren't moving there. It's that, so it is, I mean, obviously more of the jobs are in the southern part of the state, more of the businesses. But what you're saying is with this, as you call it, the, what was it called, economic winter? Or
Demographic winter.
Demographic winter. So explain again, how does that work exactly? So what's the dynamic of that?
Well, we're really talking, when you talk about total population growth, there are two pieces. One is what's called net natural population growth, which is how many people were born in a given year, how many people died. And then the second component is migration, how many people moved in versus how many people moved out. Now, historically, New Hampshire's been an in-migrant state, a big in-migrant state, especially from, as we know, the Boston area
Right.
here, where we are today. That is a little more fickle. I mean, it can, right now we're actually losing population on the migration side because of the housing bubble collapse. People just aren't moving in general because they can't sell their home.
Right.
But that's a temporary phenomenon, and migration patterns will change and shift over time. But what's more problematic with demographic winter is we're talking about a drop basically in fertility. We're not having children like we did 50 years ago, and that's due to all kind of factors, from the availability of contraception to abortion becoming legal, to dual income households, and people just not having the time anymore to raise five or six children. Those are very long-term intrinsic problems that it takes 20 years to raise a new generation. If you don't start today, you're not going to get to see the results for 20 years. So that's what makes it even more pressing. So some people might say, well, it's not that bad. It's, we're only down 100 people, say. Well, the problem is it compounds quickly. Every 100 people, becomes 200 and 300 every year, and it's cumulative. And next thing you know, our population is falling by 10% or 20%, and it'll just come out of the blue. And once that happens, and the economy starts shrinking as a result, that's too late. We need to start thinking about these problems today and finding solutions.
So, I mean, I know Carl and I are a perfect example. In Nashville, we lost population.
Yeah.
And you can't get any more south than we are. So we lost actually seats in the House. We lost 2 seats over what we had from when we came in just even this last elections every 2 years. So you can definitely see. So in other areas, like you mentioned other countries, but there must be other areas, like you said, Maine, it's affecting them. And so it has nothing to do with people not going. The same amount of people are there. It's just how they've been growing as opposed to the past.
Right, and really, when we talk about this nationwide, it's really a white problem right now, if you will. The reason why the United States is doing better versus, say, Western Europe is because we have Hispanics and African Americans who traditionally have had larger families than the white population. And so Northern New England being 95% white, you've compounded those demographics and concentrated them, if you will. So you see pockets everywhere across the country, wherever there's a large percentage of white, that they're having problems. We're going to have problems maintaining population unless we change how people view families.
What about the guy like me that would say, well, if you have a lot of these groups that you mentioned, that's also a big welfare situation. So how does that offset? So if I'm having 10 kids and they're by 5 different fathers,
right,
and they don't have a father with them anyway, now they're a part of the state, doesn't that affect, how does that offset one another?
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, the system we have in place right now is sort of encouraging, if you will, in large part, I would say family disintegration. I mean, just because you have children doesn't make you a family.
That's right. That's my point.
And that is the problem. We need to find solutions that strengthen the family, encourage marriage once again, so that we not only are getting more children, but we're also creating, as an economist, I would say, human capital. We're going to have a productive future workforce. One solution that we're going to work hard on next year are these education tax credits or savings accounts. Because it does 2 things. Number one is it's going to cut taxes for families, number one, and families who are engage with their children, because we're talking about the education process. And number two, we believe it's going to improve our overall education system by giving parents and children the choice about their education. So between the two, we're going to have a better education system, and we're going to give tax relief to the families that need it the most.
It's going to increase the overall economy, too, as you grow the population. You bring people in, you make an environment for families, and families will bring jobs in, too.
What's the bill number, Carl, that DJ be mad at me for this, but we're actually working on a bill right now. Yes. You might know it. It's
I can't remember.
10.
On what?
It's what he's talking about. It's tax credits.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
credits for education.
You mean the scholarship thing?
Yeah.
I don't remember the number of it, but it is something that some of the school districts are worried about, because they think they're going to take, obviously they lose a little bit of money. Not a lot, but I agree with you. It's a program that gives choice out there, and I think that's what we have to have. We have to have more choice as far as education is concerned. And it was giving like an 85% credit to the businesses who set up the scholarships, which I think is a good idea. I think it encourages the companies to get involved with the families too. And I think that's what they should be supporting, because again, that builds the workforce, and the workforce is usually a more stable workforce, I would think.
That's right, and absolutely, we've come out in support of that bill.
When you see the people, because Carl and I see it from a different side, I guess. We'll get activists on both sides. When we went through the whole gay marriage thing, from your side of the television, if you will, how does the general public responding to the gay marriage situation? Are people starting to finally realize that? I can remember in judiciary last term, when we went through our executive session, I remember like it was yesterday, I said to everyone on my committee, I challenge anybody in this room that was born before 1980 to tell me that it's a better world to live in now than it was when you were a kid. Because just my kids, raising them I live in a nice neighborhood. The kids don't play. It's not the same thing as when, you don't, we all tell the stories, when you, in the summertime, you went out to play and you had to come home and the street lights came on. It's a pretty common thing. There's no, I'm going to Johnny's. It's just the whole way that these parents that are before 1980, are they seeing that? Are people starting to realize that maybe we're going down the wrong path here?
Well, I think so, absolutely, because when you look at the states that have referendums, and they've had referendums on same-sex marriage, for example, they've been overturned. In New Hampshire not being a referendum state, we've yet to have a mechanism in place to find that out, and let people vote on the issue. We have to keep in mind, however, this is just one play in a game that's been going on since the 50s, even when we had no-fault divorce introduced, and that began the breakdown of the family. And we've been devaluing the family basically as a country since that time, and the direct result of that we're starting to see now, like demographic winter, where you have unstable family situations. So when you're talking about having kids and safety, we still worry about those things, but with that uncertainty, the way we've been dealing with it is we don't have the children. And unfortunately, that's the worst of all choices. And so we need to build that stability back, and we need policy that's focused more on protecting the family and not on, as we've seen changes in policy in the past, like no-fault divorce, destroy it.
Making things easier. That's what I think people always are looking for. Make it easy for me, It's hard raising a family and and everything that goes along with it, but it's very worthwhile. If they do it right.
We did our part. I got 4.
I got 4 too, so we'll keep it up.
We're here, so I guess all the way around.
Yeah.
4 is a good number.
It's just it's really frustrating sometimes to like I know when I first got in the State House, I thought it was hokey the way that we ask questions, you want follow-ups and things like that, but you need to do it because we'd be punching each other. But it's just frustrating sometimes to see how the left will put the spin on things and not to, they had families. I mean, well, I don't understand. Why can't you admit, you know what, I'm wrong, I made a mistake. This isn't working. And when we have these arguments with the gay marriage thing, it's still, my wife sometimes gets mad at me because I wasn't able to push it through, but she didn't understand what we were up against with the whole libertarian aspect of the whole state house this time. But why they don't understand and look at it and just see that it doesn't make sense. If you had, even it doesn't even matter if you're an atheist. Then you usually believe in science. Well, science tells you it takes a man and a woman to make a kid, and then to say after that that they'll tell you in committee that a child is better raised by same-sex parents than he would be by a man and a woman. They go the whole, like, to the other side of the coin on the whole thing. And I just don't understand. I guess I say this all the time. My biggest frustration with all this is what politically correctness has done to us. And that's where it comes from. People are afraid to say anything. And they come after you. And I've said a lot of things. I haven't had anything, just a couple funny comments made. But, you know, I don't. It's how you say it. I don't say it mean-spirited. I just say facts. The fact I stated, I'll stand by that. I defy anybody to look me in the face and tell me that this is a better society. The moral part of our society is better now than it was 30 years ago. It isn't.
No.
It isn't.
And that's the thing that we're not talking enough about with same-sex marriage is the children. We're basically not enacting same-sex marriage. What we've enacted is genderless marriage. And we're destroying the entire concept of what you're talking about, of mother and a father, and the fact that they play distinct roles in raising a child. You know, a child should have the right to know who their mother and father is. But with genderless marriage, you will see all kinds of scenarios where obviously one parent can't be the biological parent to that child. And so that's basically akin to we've seen in the past with divorce and stepchildren. And everybody knows, everybody instinctively knows that in the case of a divorce, that a stepchild situation is a more difficult situation, one that requires more care, not less. But here, we're now going to make that the standard under this new marriage classification or whatever you want to call it. And nobody's talking about what the effects on the child will be 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. We are seeing some of that already with divorce.
I was going to ask you that.
And what happens is those children themselves have uncertainty, and that's why now we're seeing a rise in cohabitation. They don't even want to give marriage a chance anymore. They just stay right out from the gate. Let's just
live together.
Let's just live together and not worry about this whole formal marriage thing. Was that really what we want? You know, no. We want, as a society, we want the stability that marriage brings to the table.
Now they have. I know I asked this, I don't even remember who it was. It wasn't Cornerstone. They must be tracking, and I just don't know how you're going to get actual data. Like we went through the whole thing when we went through the parental notification debate. To get that, you can't even get statistics of how many abortions are even performed in the state. So they'll give you these different statistics now on the partial birth ones. They say we don't do them, but you don't really know because there's no stats on it. So it's going to be difficult for you guys to gather real facts as far as what's going on with following a kid that was from a same-sex marriage to where he's at today.
Well, and that's right. That's because of the biases that are built into these researchers. They don't see these as a problem, so why study them? Only problems get studied. You see? Yeah. So you end up in that situation where you don't get the research done.
And who funds these things, too? I mean, they'll just go after wherever the money is. A lot of different people follow, well, I don't want to get into what am I thinking of? The global warming part.
Yeah.
I think that
Same
there's
thing.
a lot of, I think a lot of the people followed the money, and they just came up with ideas that followed, caused the world's going to burn up, or something like that. I think you have to go back to hard science and really challenge that. But and we need that in economics or your demographic studies. What's happening? You know, I think things like you're saying in the North Country, where we're not getting enough to repopulate that area. We got to do something to make this New Hampshire again, where you have a lot of happy families growing up and having children and forming a better society, I think.
That's right. I mean, we actually live up in the upper Connecticut River Valley, and we talk to businesses all the time, and they already can't find the workers they need. And then you compound it with, the educational establishment not producing enough qualified workers, and which brings us back to, solutions like education savings account. But that's a whole problem. I mean, it takes a lot of money to raise a child to become a productive citizen. Where are you going to get that money in the future with the economy shrinking? And conversely, that also means society's aging. And we already know we've got Medicaid, we have Social Security. We already know they're bankrupt. Right. So how are we going to raise children tomorrow when we know one thing's for sure? Our taxes burden is going to get higher. So we're going to have less money to do a very important job for our families. And we don't have the policies in place right now to support the families we do have.
So Cornerstone now for the rest of the legislative session, you have specific bills you're targeting to either support or try to shoot them down?
Well, we are doing with a lot of the abortion bills that are coming up currently, and we have Ellen Cole working on those issues. My background as an economist, I guess my issues are sort of done for the year, if you will.
Yeah.
But they're going to reoccur again next year. Another issue that we worked on hard was gambling this year. And, we see that as a threat to the family. I mean, it's addictive. It's not a net creator to the economy. In fact, a study just came out yesterday in Maine looking at the effects of the Bangor casino up there. You know what they found? 95% of all the money in that raised by that casino came from Mainers. There were no net positive gain to the local economy. In fact, it was more like a black hole. Because that local money that would have been spent at local restaurants or other establishments instead went to the casino, which is owned by an out-of-state company, and taken right out of state. It was like something like almost $70 million out of Maine. And Maine's economy right now is struggling, just like everybody coming out of the Great Recession. That's $70 million that could have been better left in the hands of
no, who wants to go to Bangor?
Of folks up there. Well, and that's exactly the point. I mean, you've already got an area of the state that's struggling, and now here they've plunked this casino down. Now, after the fact, once the casino is built, now they suddenly find out, wait a minute, 95% of the money's leaving the state, and that was here.
Gambling is a strange. That's probably the strangest bill that we deal with because that's not party driven. There's as many Democrats and Republicans on both sides of it. It's weird. You see it come out whenever the vote goes, like this last one. You see, it was kind of in the middle. I mean, it went down. I have different opinions of gambling. In this part of the state, what they talked about with putting one over in Hudson at Green Meadow, I'm not a gambler, but I love Mohegan Sun, and I think it's like we used to go to shows when we go there. And I have to say, I went mostly because I was getting free tickets from a friend of mine who hates country music. So when the country music bands would come, he'd give me tickets, we'd go have a place to stay. I don't think I'd pay to go do it. But I guess one of the points that's been made for gambling, because it's in this area, people want it. You're going to have now with Massachusetts, you're going to have the people going to Massachusetts, and we're still going to have the social responsibility of paying for the addiction because they're not going to get treatment in Massachusetts. They're going to come here or come back home. And I'll have to say, because it's never been in my committee, and I never really looked at the actual facts and percentages and, but I can tell you, even in leadership, it's split down the middle. I mean, there's ones for it and there's ones against it, and they're not wishy-washy either way.
Well, I just find it ironic that in a lot of New Hampshire policy, we always try to do the exact opposite that Massachusetts does. But for some reason in gambling, we want to do exactly what Massachusetts does. It doesn't quite make makes sense to me in that regards. I say they can keep the revenue. They can also keep the problems in Massachusetts. I mean, you know, we're going to have to deal with some of the issues. That's right. I mean,
I'd
we
like to
keep,
know now what we spend like on people that go to Mohegan Sun, or are there? I don't even know. Are there any
Yeah.
programs in the state to help gambleholics, and are they state funded?
There's no state-funded ones that I can think of, but they did show how much money was leaving New Hampshire. There's some kind of analysis that's been done, like it's in the order of $100 million a year, I think. That's leaving New Hampshire because they go down to Connecticut, and they figure it'll be more when Massachusetts gets there. The people who take an easy drive.
Yeah, that's one thing is I'm a huge fan of Cornerstone, and if you do anything that you're going to agree with every single thing that everyone does, you have to have a robot. So that one we might disagree on. I try as best I can, and I know Carl and I used to sit next to each other when we first came in, and I can't think of any vote that we voted differently on. So we have think a lot alike in things, and we both believe we've been put in as reps to serve our constituents. And I'm pretty sure he's in the same boat as me. I mean, when I was walking around, this is a big thing, and there was very few people that said to me, "You're not for." I had it on my literature, so I was exposed by it, and I didn't. I really can't think other than a group that would you get, you know. And I kind of disregard when I get a boilerplate letter, unless it's from a constituent and they put their address and it's a personal letter. I don't respond to it, but. Overwhelmingly, it was in favor, I think.
There are a lot in favor, and I'll tell you, one thing I heard today is that when it comes back next year, as you say, it is going to come back, instead of having the profit from that go into the general fund, which I think didn't intrigue anybody, they want to put it into infrastructure, which is a smart thing to do, I think, if they want to sell it. And it might have a stronger appeal to people, because the one thing we need in this state is money in that transportation thing. I mean, we have a 10-year road plan. My committee handles that with 5 years of money. And we're trying to figure out, you know, we're just hoping that the federal government comes in with more money so we can finish 93 and get that all straightened out. But there are lots of other, I mean, there's 300 bridges that are on the red list. One thing, I mean, you saw how far we went with the ones in Portsmouth before we tore it down. Yeah. I mean, that was a hazard.
Yeah, the first session, I ended up, I pulled a John Kerry. I was for it before I was against it. And I ended up voting in the final bill in the first session. I voted against it. And the reason was I didn't know we were going to be in charge this time. Mm-hmm. And I just figured if you gave the Democrats $200 million, they'll spend $300. So it was like feeding a heroin addict more heroin. So that's the problem. If they settle like you did and it went to the general fund, like anyone could spend it.
That's right.
But if it goes to something constructive, pardon the pun, it wouldn't be bad. Was there anything else with Cornerstone that we should know about? How do we get a hold of you, first of all? If people, I'm sure you can use donations. And,
absolutely.
Truly, from my standpoint, because again, on judiciary, you know, the two major things with parental notification and gay marriage, you guys were huge in that. And I don't know what we would do, because there's so many on the other side of activist groups with so much money. With gay marriage, we dealt with the whole 612 thing, which the numbers I heard was $7 million that they put into the Democratic campaign coffers in the last election. And that, we didn't have anything. I had no support from any financial support from any organization. All we had was you guys. I can remember going to meetings that we had impromptu and, you know, off in the countryside, just to try to organize, to try to come up with, even like I said, the religious liberties part. So
we will have a slide on the show which will show your website. Okay. Okay, and if there's a phone number you'd like us to have, or people who call you on.
The website's the best place, and you can like us on Facebook and Twitter through our website. Okay. And participate that way. And absolutely, we are outgunned in this fight. There's a lot of national money coming in on the same-sex marriage issue. I don't know if you heard, but the National Organization of Marriage was recently attacked through cyberspace, where their Facebook and Twitter feeds were compromised. So, you know, that's the kind of resources and willingness the other side is willing to go, how far they're willing to go to counter our message. So we need all the support.
It is an all-out war, if you want, pardon it, but it is. I mean, people are very, very vehement about it. Well, I attended the session today on the abortion bills. They have, you know, we're fighting the women again. It's against the women. And, you know, nobody wants to stand up for the unborn child. And there were two people that did make a good call on that. One, the Respect for Life person, the leader, I can't remember his name. But that's, the Senate's looking at that. They're fighting that. I think most of the people are pro-life in the Senate. And hopefully that these are just steps that guarantee that people are making a reasonable decision. I mean, partial birth abortion is terrible in my mind.
It's just, it's amazing to me, you know, you've heard it, I'm sure, but you can't say it in my mind enough. Right down the line, the Democrats, when we vote on parental notification and things like that, it's 100%. They don't budge on those issues. And then when you vote on death penalty, they want to save the rapist murderer, but they want to kill the innocent kid. I don't even know how, if a Martian or you know, an alien was looking at us, they'd say, what? How do you even
condemn the innocent and protect the guilty?
I just don't know how you justify that. I mean, I could see then just say then they should be, technically they should be pro-death penalty. You know, kill everybody. They wanted to do, we had the suicide pill. That's what we call it. They call it death with dignity. They actually had that, and that bill, which Cornerstone again played a big part in, they were going to get you, if you wanted to get the pill, you just had to be diagnosed with a terminal illness. Well, diabetes is a terminal illness. There's no cure for diabetes. So you needed a witness to get the prescription, to receive it, but no witness to take it. So you take this pill home with you and put it in your medicine cabinet. So, you know, you had things like, we had someone come from all the way from Seattle to testify because they had in Washington State, and they were the only state that did. And how horrible this is that you could, they at least have a supervised, you go to the, it's like Soylent Green, you know, that's what it is. But it's just their mentality that we have the woman from Civil Liberties Union that, and I finally had to say, because I couldn't take it anymore, and I got a little bit of gut for this. I said, so let me just get this straight. If you don't get them in the womb, you're going to get them when they become a geriatric. So one way or another, you're going to get them, right? And she didn't like that. But anyway, I want to thank you for coming in. It's a pleasure. Come in again sometime.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you for the work that you do.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
We'll have you back when the next session starts. And thank you for joining us. And remember that the National Republican City Committee meets the second Thursday of every month at 6:30 at the Crown Plaza. Thank you again for listening.
Take care. Well, thanks.
Well, thank you. It does go by fast.
Yeah.
I told you, it was